Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monetary Mentors Monetary Monastery, our podcast focused on budget magic. I am Monetary Mentor Sam with you this evening, and with me is my brother JP. Say hello to the good people, JP.
Hello to the good people. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's kind of a miracle you're here, right? Given that you, exciting news, just added
I,
to the family.
I, yeah, I don't know if it's a miracle, but we are very excited that my daughter was born just within the last 2 weeks, and it's been a real joy, meeting her and welcoming her to the family. And she's pretty useless right now, but she's going to be a future Magic player, so start training them.
That's right. And for our
Yep.
listeners, as you listen in, just discount everything JP says today because he obviously hasn't been as plugged in as normal. So we'll let him talk, but just glaze over
Yeah,
those
just
parts.
just just mute. Actually, just edit it out
Yeah, he,
entirely.
he
No, I'm
thinks.
excited for this set. I'm really excited for this set. I was really excited to hear about like the premise of the set, and then it kind of like grew a little stale, and then I was really sick of murder mysteries. And I was like, I hope this isn't some niche thing. And then they were like, well, we can fix our design flaws by just making really pushed cards. So that's where
Okay,
we're
so
at.
let's start there, I guess. So general format, we're going to start by talking about the set in a big sense coming up.
Yeah.
We're going to have a lightning round of the 40 most expensive cards because we don't need to talk about those. That's not where we live on the expensive cards, and lots of other people will talk about those. And then we'll highlight some of the cards off of that top 40 list, like down in the dregs, as it were, that we
Yeah.
think are particularly interesting. So, right up front, let's talk about this set. And this set is Outlaws of Thunder Junction, but also big score because it's really two sets in one with bonus sheets, and it's a jillion cards. JP, go.
Oh my goodness, this is Jillian cards. This is an interesting place that we could find ourselves, as I don't think they knew about 3 year standard. Even now, we thought it would maybe be two sets before they even knew it, but I
Yeah.
don't. I don't think they even knew when they made this set. And they also are living in the aftermath of Aftermath, where they released a set that was basically Mythics only print straight to Commander, but we want to charge you full pack prices for it.
Mm-hmm.
And they have now kind of shoehorned this additional set into this main standard set. So we have a bunch of like kind of over the top cards, a bunch of cards that are supposed to be like small additions to the format, are all coming in at mythic rarity. Kind of, I can't help but think like about Coppercoat Vanguard, which was one of the only cards that saw play in Aftermath, and like that would be mythic now in this set.
Yeah.
So I applaud them for refraining from their greed of selling 5 card Magic packs for full price. Um, but I am a little worried that we're gonna have to spend a little more mythic wild cards than we want to on Arena.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many mythics in this set, and they're
Yeah,
so
it's
hard to
like
come by. If you don't
yeah,
use mythics a lot, I'll often find myself on Arena. It's like, oh, I've got, I'm out of rares, but I've got,
yeah,
8 to 10 mythics lying around. But if you ever find yourself down to 0 mythics after crafting a couple of play sets for whatever, and then you're like, well, I just need 4 more. It takes forever to get
yeah.
four
They
more.
they accrue very slowly.
So it might be a bit of a mythic pinch on folks' wallet. I think the good news is just looking at a lot of these cards. I mean, they seem like interesting cards that do stuff, but I don't know if they strike me as all heavily playable staples. So hopefully we can not bother crafting most of them. But really, where this has led us is I think the last time we did one of these previews, we did like the top 20 cards that were
Yeah,
expensive and didn't really talk about those so much outside of our lightning round. Here we did 40, and the cards left over after that are still a little pricey. Like,
yeah. We were talking about like $4 cards in the top 20, and the highest was the troll little like meme mole god was for like
yeah,
$28, and we're like, haha, what a sad place to be. And I ended up liking Murders of Karlov Manor just in the sense of like there's small, there's a little something for everything. It's not too crazy, but this screams like really pushing the limits of a lot of card designs and also like printing directly to Commander, and hopefully it doesn't hurt too much in the constructed formats.
Yeah, it's just wild looking at these pre-order prices, which obviously vary. If you're watching the YouTube video, we have just the deck list pulled up, and you can see this sideboard of 40 cards that we're not going to talk about too much. I mean, Lotus Ring, $84. I see $20, $15, $21, $50, 15,
Oh,
37,
yeah, yeah,
16.
it's
It's
up
just
there.
they're all so expensive, and it's like it can't possibly hold, but also I'm a little worried if like one of the mythics from the Aftermathy set does pop off and become like the ultimate format staple. It's only going to appear in, I think there's an Aftermathy card in
One
like
out
one
of
in
four pack,
five packs or
one
four
in five,
packs.
something like that.
So it just feels like they might, if they're really in demand, they might be like much scarcer than we'd think. And we'll have to see how it plays out. But it's just we're in unknown territory right now, so
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
It feels
But
like this set's going to be leaving a footprint as well for the next 3 years at least. Just the amount of power that's in it.
yeah, and if not the power, at least like the it existing. Like it's so many
Yeah.
cards. It's so many cards,
Yeah.
and so many of them are pushed for something. Mostly commander, but we'll see. So let's start with our lightning round. So how this is gonna work? We're just gonna blow through this top 40.
We're gonna try. We're gonna
We're gonna
try real
try.
hard.
Yeah, well, I say blow for like maybe an hour. That would be a good
Yeah,
goal.
you'll see the runtime and you'll know before we know
Whether we were
exactly how
successful.
bad we botched this. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is, if you're watching the video of this on YouTube, hopefully you can see the cards as they pop up on the screen, or you're familiar with them. We cannot stop and read all of these cards, or the runtime would be 6 hours, and JP's daughter would grow up an orphan.
She has a
Not
mom. She has a mom. To clarify.
without knowing her father. How about that?
Yeah.
So so we're just going to say the name and then say in like a sentence what we think of it, with a couple exceptions where like actually this is pretty interesting. We might read the card and go into it in more detail. But we're just gonna try and be really quick with this very strange set of 40 cards. So first up on our list is Fomori Vault, which is a land that cares about artifacts. I think this is neat, but I think it's too artifact focused to be like an ultra staple. Do you have any thoughts on
Yeah.
Fomori Vault?
By the time that you're in late game trying to scrounge for value with its looting effect, the either you have a board state that's winning or you don't.
Yeah, I think
But
it's does a lot in artifact decks, but I don't know if artifact
yeah.
decks like that really exist right now. We have Tarnation Vista. Uh, this seems bad to me, like quite bad. It's pre-ordering for
Yeah,
$32,
agreed.
so maybe someone knows something I don't. But you agree this is kind of stinky?
Yep, you'll never see this card. Guaranteed.
Well, if you pull one or buy one, if you buy one for $32, you're gonna play it a lot to feel like you got your money's worth, but you
No,
didn't.
people will laugh at you. People will laugh. I was gonna say, what is that card? Oh, it's like 5 cents now. All right, next.
Final Showdown, an instant spree card.
Yeah,
Um,
let's take a moment on this.
okay, to walk us through it.
I mean, this is amazing. It's a new take on board wipes. We love them. It's also got other things. The new spree mechanic is kind of a version of kicker, and I really like this. It's kind of like a modal kicker. So you'll pay 1 mana at instant speed in white for this card, and then I'll explain spree a little bit. So you do one colorless, you get the next ability. You do an additional colorless, you can add on the other ability, and you pay 3 and 2 colorless for the third ability. And you have to choose at least one mode. So the play pattern for this is you sit there with 6 to 7 mana open. You wait until your last opponent's turn, probably in commander, and then you drop as a 6 mana destroy all creatures. If you are a Voltron strategy, you play an additional mana to give indestructible to one of your creatures, and if they happen to have some indestructible board, you just pay an additional mana so that all of their creatures lose indestructible. So very flexible as well. You can also just pay 2 mana and make one of your creatures indestructible at instant speed, which is like super useful. So I love being able to sit on this card, and I think it's going to see a lot of play in a variety of decks, particularly in Commander. I'm not sure if we're going to be playing this in 60 card formats, but in Commander, being able to do destroy all creatures and one of your creatures gets to live is how games tend to end.
Yeah, so I've been a little low on this card for constructed. I hadn't really been
Yeah.
thinking about it in terms of commander. It does seem very strong in commander. We're 3 cards into this lightning round, and I'm gonna break like the. This is the first hard rule break for our lightning
All
round,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
Well,
do
it's
want
only
to
like
talk about.
37 more.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about spree in general because I think this mechanic is wild. Like if a card with spree has one reasonably costed mode on it or an effect that you want, then
It's
it's
immediately
so
good.
so immediately good. It's like
Yeah.
because it's modal and it's modal like mana value, like it fits in different spots in the curve to do different things, but you can it's additive. Like you can do 1 or 2 or 3. So they're always going to scale into the length of the game.
Yeah.
That's not to say everyone is good, but I don't think we've seen a mechanic that quite works like this, which is always fertile ground for underestimating how strong it can be. So I have really high hopes for a lot of the spree stuff, just given the flexibility and the scalability of the effects.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Back time in Gold Vein Hydra.
I love Golden Hydra. It's a X and green. Enter the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on, so it scales with the game. It has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. If it didn't have Trample and Haste, it would be total garbage. So to me, X green, Trample, Haste is good. They also added Vigilance, and on top of that, when it dies, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to its power. I think this is going to be, if this ever starts popping off, March of Otherworldly Light is going to put it right down in the dumps. But we actually are going to have a rotation for the first time in forever. So I think after rotation, this is going to put some hurt on a lot of people. So I like it.
I think this is a big, splashy mono green beater that is also good in Commander, kind of in the vein of
Yeah,
like old Gnawbones. But they've printed a
yeah.
lot of those, and they're good in Commander. They're not good in Constructed. That's kind of how I feel this one's gonna go.
Yeah, I think the Trample and Haste is a finisher, though. I think it has a chance.
I don't think it's like I think it's playable if you want a
Yeah,
big
yeah, yeah.
splashy green creature, but I think there's like a ceiling on that type of card.
For sure. Absolutely.
All right, then we have Lost GT. Lost
Garbage. Let's go
GT.
next.
Better than garbage, but I also agree it's probably not super exciting.
Yeah.
Tiny Bones, the Pickpocket.
Uh, it's too hard for me to imagine this thing getting too much value.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it does a lot for 1 mana, which always is always a nice place to be. And it has legendary synergies. If you think about like the
Yeah.
channel lands, if you think about like Relic of Legends and Plaza of Heroes type stuff. Mox Amber. It's always interesting to have cheap legends for Mox Amber, but I agree this card just doesn't. It has to connect. If connecting is going to
Yeah.
really stink for your opponent, they will just block and trade with it, which is like good to trade a 1 drop for a
Yeah.
2 drop,
You
but
still have
it's
to pay for the spell that you're casting, and when this thing is hitting for free, they're not going to have anything big in their graveyard anyways.
yeah, kind of agree. Moving on, we have Bristly Bill, Spine Sower.
If you see your opponent cast this, relax and enjoy the free win.
I don't disagree. All right, Collector's Cage.
Could be interesting. I think it's going to struggle with having cards that are worth hiding away in addition to have 3 individual creatures. If it didn't cost a mana to tap, then I think I'd like it just for that, but it's 1 mana and tap. I don't think this is going to make it.
Could not have said it better myself. This card was on my short list for like maybe this is really interesting, and then the more I thought about it, it's like it's actually really restrictive that it costs a mana to tap and put a counter on something. That's not a very good rate after you've invested a
Yeah.
card and 2 mana in it. And then 3 creatures with different powers. Just having three
It's
creatures
an
is
ask.
tough.
It's an
Yeah, it's
ask.
it's not hard. And then what's the hideaway payoff? Your deck has to be built around that. I quickly fell out of love with this card for all the
Yeah.
reasons you mentioned. Okay. Next we have Generous Plunderer, which I've been looking at and is neat. It doesn't do anything for
Yeah.
me, but it's a lot of text on a 2 mana 2/2.
Yeah, I think that your opponent's going to make equal. It's not like, oh, I'm giving them something that they can't use. Any deck can use a treasure token, tapped or
Hmm.
not. And I think that you're going to have no issues. I mean, if they're like a soul artifact deck, congratulations, you kind of counterpicked them. But just relying on the treasure tokens, like they're just going to use the treasure. And I think treasures are actually better if you don't sit on them. Like I feel like a lot of people tend to sit on their treasures. Like I'll save this for a rainy day. I think it actually kind of encourages them to make the correct play and use their treasures to get their value now.
Yeah, I had a brief love affair with Blood Vial Purveyor, I think it was called. It's like a 4 drop from Crimson Vow that gave your opponents blood tokens and then got bigger for blood tokens
Yeah.
that they had. And like that
They
seemed
just say
really sweet,
thanks.
but they just sacked all their blood tokens, so it
Yeah,
didn't
they're just
even
like,
get
oh,
big.
thanks. These are useful.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it didn't get
I think
bigger
this
at
could be
all.
fun in Commander because there will be an artifact deck, and because you can use like hey, I'll give you a treasure token if you do this. It's kind
Yeah,
of fun
I
that way. I
I
don't think it's
agree.
OP, but it's definitely fun that way.
Okay, here's the card. Jace Reawakened.
Oh my
And
gosh,
by
there's so
here's a
much going
card.
on here.
By
There's so
here's a
much going
card.
on here.
I think this is a card that stinks. What do you think about this card?
Ooh, I tell you what, it doesn't stink, but it's hard to say whether it's gonna. This can go in control decks really easily. I'm not sure. There's another mechanic about plotting. This is kind of like supports the plot mechanic. You can definitely play it in a deck that um, doesn't need plotting. Like there's the 3 mana quick study. You can drop this on turn 4 the for free. Basically, you're actually like cheating mana, and then hold up a counter spell or removal for their blocker, or attacker. So I think this is actually pretty good, and it's going to be super annoying to play against. That's my opinion.
All right, I'm using our second team timeout to talk
Oh my
about
gosh, yeah, I get to at least one of these timeouts. Yeah.
uh,
Oh, talk about the mechanic. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
yeah, to talk about plot in general,
Yeah.
which is um, you pay for it essentially, and then you don't get it, and then later you do get it, like you,
You get it for
but
free at a later turn at
right.
sorcery
So
speed.
right. So what's interesting is there's usually isn't a cost reduction associated with this. You usually pay for it at face value, and then later you get it, and there's some kind of bonus if it was plotted, or it's a creature with haste that you don't want to tap out to deploy on that turn. So you kind of tap out to deploy it without putting it into play, so it's not vulnerable, which is interesting. The thing I really wanted to highlight about plot is that this is something they can't, quote unquote, fix in post, but they really should have named this foretell, and foretell should have been plot, like mechanically and flavor wise, because a plot being a known thing makes a lot less sense. Like the plot should be the secret face down ability, and foretell should be the I am predicting the future. Here's what's going to happen keyword, which has just been driving me nuts for reasons that would make sense if you knew me in my personal life. Like it's just who I
I
am.
do
But
know you in your personal life, and I'm sorry that Magic Design has failed you this way. I hope
yeah,
that you can forgive them.
I will try. Okay, time in. So I just think it's a tough ask to have a card in your control deck that doesn't affect the board, that you can't get down early to really like start ticking up towards that ultimate, that doesn't put you up cards. It helps you cheat on mana, but only with small spells, which you is much less effective later in the game, like turn 4 and like turn 5 is the earliest that you're plotting something off this. And it's going to be a small spell. It's not like by turn 5 you have mana for small spells. So I just don't see this doing a ton, because even the ultimate, like you need to have spells, and it requires you having a lot of
Yeah,
spells in
yeah.
hand to copy to really even pay that
So
off.
you can copy creature spells, right? And just make tokens of them.
Yeah, but like what deck
Yeah.
is doing that?
I
Like I
think
just
I think this is going to be good in like Demir mid range. This is going to be good, and I I think that you can hold up a go for the throat and play this on turn 4, and have a blocker. Like I don't think this is going to go in pure control, though it might. I think this is going to kind of go like you just slide it down. turn 4, just plop it down and start looting, start getting rid of the sweepers that you don't need, or getting rid of the creature removal that you don't need. Um, I like it. I like it. It's a nice little
Okay.
guy.
Yeah, I'm on record as not liking it, and we'll check the
Yeah.
receipts later.
Yep.
Next, we have Legion Extruder. So this is a card I really, really liked, and now I just kind of like it. So it's two
Oh,
mana
I
artifact.
mean,
It enters the battlefield, does 2 damage to any target, and then you can pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice another artifact to make a 3/3 artifact creature token. So at first, this struck me as like you play a removal spell and then it sticks around and accrues value all game, which I mean, it does, but the floor is pretty low if because it can't sacrifice itself to make a 3/3. So
yeah,
potentially this is a
yeah,
fairly anemic removal spell that then depends on other stuff being on the board that you want to sacrifice and invest mana into to
yeah,
make 3/3s that are also fairly anemic. Um,
yeah.
but what do you think about this one?
I kind of wanted the same thing, but I was like, my mindset is like, oh, it does two things, but then neither of them is worth playing, and I think that the second ability is really bad because you have to tap this, so you can't like go infinite in any way unless you have like a lot of cards to go with it. And who really cares about a 3/3 Golem artifact creature token? I don't.
Yeah, I had a brief stint playing a lot of Malcator and like cheating to get multiple 3/3 artifact creatures off that, which is pretty cool. But the prevailing like, oh, this isn't that good realization was like 3/3s. Doesn't matter if you like build your deck so you get two of them. It's like you still just
Yeah,
have
they're
two
like,
3/3s.
okay, yeah, I'll block with Shieldred.
Yeah,
Okay, like,
exactly, exactly. All right, we have Molten Duplication, a 2 mana sorcery that makes a token of a creature artifact for one
all right,
turn.
I'm gonna use a timeout here.
Okay,
There,
we're out of
I
timeouts. This
All right,
like you
this is
get
our
one.
last timeout.
We've got a lot
Hey,
of
you
cards to
used
go.
two. I get one more. This is my timeout. This is my big thing. This is a theme in the set, and as an avid Brutaclad player who is a command like one of my favorite commander decks, I am really happy with the brew of Brutaclad that I currently have, and they've added like 10 cards that are all just like staple on to Brutaclad auto includes, and I'm really frustrated by it. So here's like another one that's like, oh, this is also the best card that you could possibly put in Brutaclad. There's a couple we'll see later on here that make Karn Structs for good value, and I'm just like, come on, I got so.
Hey, they make you buy cards. That's their job,
Well,
right?
I don't know if I'm going to. It's just there's just so much support for it, and I'm wondering like, are they reprinting Brutaclad in standard? It's not even like it was never. I don't think it was ever legal in constructed formats, but
All
it's
right.
just like
Yeah, I'm
so much
gonna.
support for this archetype that I don't see like it's just a weird thing for them just randomly to hard pivot into all these artifact tokens and creature tokens copying.
I'm gonna Akram's Razor this and say that the person designing the set obviously plays Brutaclad exclusively in Commander, and just call it a day. That's
Yeah,
obviously the explanation.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a sweet card for that. I actually think like this is just strikes me as a sweet card. I bet there are a bunch of neat things to be done with it. It does depend on having a good thing to copy, which kind of limits its like top tier constructed viability, but
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's a really sweet card. And 2 mana feels pretty aggressively costed
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
All right, we have Pest Control, a 2 mana kind of board wipe that cycles.
yeah. I mean, it's very simple to understand. Amazing sideboard card if certain formats one or less is prevalent, and this becomes main board and just one of the best cards, just completely hosing it. So simple, love it.
Yeah, so I'm even wondering if like because it has cycling, if it even makes sense as like
Yeah,
a main board card, just
yeah, it
because it's
depends on the meta. It just depends on the meta. If people are playing a lot of like Boros Convoke, then this card is going to be main boarded. But no, it's actually even good against like the domain decks whenever they do their um, blanking on the name, the migration, herd migration.
yep, cleans up herd
Just say,
migration.
oh, that was nice, 2 mana for your 7 or whatever. So next, thank you.
Clears up all those construct tokens that you were talking about too.
Yeah, yeah. Oh well.
All right, Slick Shot Show Off, which I think we can pause here and just acknowledge this is like the card everyone seems to be the most hyped about. So I think us saying, yeah, it does look good isn't going to add a ton to that conversation, but I will add that, yeah, I think it does look
Yeah,
good.
I'm gonna say that it's actually like better than people are even saying. Like I think this is gonna be really popular in prowess decks. It's gonna be good in mono red in particular. It's a wizard. Like let's go, let's get rid of, the pyromancer and the explorer lists and shove this rare into that slot. So I think it's great. I can't wait to brew. There's another card on here I'm talking about. I'm really into. I'm gonna make Is It Prowess work. I will make it work. This will be part of the machinations.
Yeah, so I guess my only thing on it, I think this is really good. I think it's probably the best two drop for prowess we have, and the deck needs a couple. The deck has kind of slowly gone through this upgrading the two drop process. Like we had electrostatic infantry and sprite dragon, and then fugitive codebreaker, and now slick shot show off, and like just like the decks, each of those little upgrades hasn't gotten good yet. Like it's going to make the deck better, but I don't know if just like improving that two drop slot in the deck is going to give the deck the legs that it needs to be ultra competitive.
That
But
makes sense to me, but I'm still. I mean, this is what I'm hoping to open in my packs because I want to start brewing with it.
yeah, it's a good card. It's a good card. All right, Ancient Cornucopia. This I feel nothing when I look at this card.
If you like, yeah, I mean it's a 3 mana rock. If you play, 5 color and you want some mana fixing and life gain, it's probably better than cultivate, but not
Yeah,
really.
that's meh. Okay, Assimilation Aegis. Um, I love this card.
It's really fun.
So
It's really fun.
so I want to talk about this a little
Borderline good and really fun.
bit. So I'm gonna slow us down and talk about this one because I
Yeah.
think it's worth it.
Three.
So this is 3 mana, one a white and a blue for an artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, exile up to one target creature until it leaves the battlefield.
Hmm?
When it becomes attached to a creature, for as long as it remains attached, it becomes a copy of a creature card exiled with it, equipped to. So this is not Soul Ring, Oblivion Ring that hits
Yeah.
just creatures in with a more restrictive mana cost.
Hmm.
But then if you hit a good creature, you can turn a creature you have into that creature for the
All day
rest of
long.
the game
Yeah.
until they remove this and get their thing back. But that's always been a problem with this type of effect. So
Yeah. All
I
those Mirror tokens now become
that's right.
Eldreds.
Shoulders and Vein Rippers. So I don't know if I think this card is quote unquote really good, but I think if you just think about like a catch all, this will remove any creature for 3 mana spell, which is nice to have in decks, and then it's going to upgrade your creatures forever after that, assuming they have
Yeah.
something good to get. Like maybe it's a sideboard card because the odds of them not having good creatures to get with this is too high, but like people play good creatures. You've got Vein Rippers and Shouldreds and Atraxas floating around. And like I think if you're playing something obviously base blue white, maybe with an artifact synergy thing that this ties into as well, but I'm thinking
Yeah.
about like small blue white creatures like Storm, like Spyglass Siren and the various Thraben Inspector type things that are good value, but then late game you can pay 2 mana to turn your removal spell into also turning one of those into Shieldred seems quite good. So I don't know
Yeah.
if the deck home exists for it, but I think what this card does is really strong.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it should be fun. It's definitely like a when it works, it's going to be amazing kind of
Yeah.
card.
Yeah, which those cards are usually bad because they usually don't work that often. But a removal spell that can also help you win the game is a good spot to be in. So we'll see. Okay, moving on. Esoteric Duplicator. So I think this one falls into that camp of like, wow, that's a really strong, powerful card that does a lot of stuff. I have no idea if it'll see any constructed play because it takes a bunch of mana and it's slow and grindy, and there are a billion other options for really powerful, slow, grindy, over the top type
Yeah.
spell things.
It seemed. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to adjudicate these kinds of cards.
It does a lot. Like it is
Slow
strong.
advantage, grindy. Yeah. In standard, you're not really sacrificing that many artifacts, um, but you can just kind of like if you have multiples of these, then you just pay a ton of mana and draw a ton of cards, but slowly. So
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna see this card very much.
All right, Giralf the Fleshright, kind of a monetary mentor type token producer zombie thing. Do we like
Yeah,
this
Zombie
one?
Storm. Love it.
Zombie Storm.
Love Zombie Storm.
I think this card is probably very strong, is where I'm coming down on it. Having 3 toughness natively is good. It falls in the camp of like 3 drops that if they kill it, you're kind of out. You can 3 drop,
Yeah.
like it doesn't do anything, but if you untap with it, like they used to make like 5 or 6 drops that if you untapped with, you could win the game. And it's like wild to me to see 3 drops that like you just need to untap one time and then you win the game.
I mean, you also have to cast a lot of spells.
You do, but like this is going to have a lot of spells in it, and the it's really the +1/+1 counters um, that I think are being slept on as text here, just because 2/2s this card makes aren't wildly strong, and those counters are going to make them and other zombies relevant potentially. But
Well, I mean, it's not Cathar's Crusade, right?
put
It's just kind of like it grows. It's not like all zombies. It's the next one is two and then three and then four.
right. And so okay, when you cast a spell, yeah, but you need how many to have that pay off well? Like,
I think this is a you dump a bunch of cards onto the board. None of them have haste, and then your opponent board wipes. That's what I think is gonna happen.
okay, I'm coming around, but it's
Yeah,
still sweet.
it's
It's
fun. It can pop off, but it's definitely not the truth.
all right. I recant. I take it all back.
It's fine. It's fun to get excited about zombies tokens. That's kind of my favorite thing. So
All right, enough zombie tokens. Let's talk about something that I think is supposed to be very cute.
oh
Loot
my
the
god,
key to
yeah.
everything. What's your reaction to this one?
It's just gross. It's just teamer value. I'll say, you know why this card is not going to see any play? It's because it's in teamer. These are the worst colors in Magic right now. There's just creatures are too valuable, and there's not enough removal in those colors. So the cost alone is going to be. Um, it's just
Yeah, that's
yeah,
it's really
just
restrictive. I also
yeah,
think I mean the reason this card isn't going to see play is the restricted mana cost and the terrible body and the ward 1 being pretty
yeah.
negligible.
Ward one is like ward is always better than it seems. Ward one is not always better than it seems.
Yeah, to kill a 1/2. You just shock it for
Yeah.
2 mana and you're still up mana.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
Lotus
Plus it's
Ring.
ugly. It's
Lotus
garbage
Ring.
creature.
Why is this card $84? I think it's
Probably infinite combos.
yeah, but like
It's got to be. You put the equip cost for 0, and then you add 3 mana, and there's plenty of like pay 2 mana, create a creature token kind of effects or whatever. So
oh, sure. But like, there are a
yeah.
lot of cards that win the game in Commander that don't cost $84. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, it's going to come
Probably
down
because
to
it
just
has Lotus.
pre-orders,
Probably
but
they printed Lotus in front of it, and people's brains turned off.
kind of my thought process. Uh,
Indestructible is nice. Indestructible and Vigilance is nice, but this is not $83 worth of nice.
Agreed. Nexus of Becoming, 6 mana, huge artifacty value thing. Do we like this or not?
Nope, you nailed it perfectly. You like six. You like value artifacts. This is for you. Next.
Hold on, let's give it its due. Beginning of
Oh
combat,
my
you draw
gosh.
a card. Oh,
No, it's
we're
really
back to
fun.
making
It's
three
really
threes.
fun. I like that it can trigger on your first main phase. You get the card draw, and then you can plop an Atraxa down. Congratulations, you paid 6 mana for your 3/3 Atraxa instead of 7 mana for your 7/7 Atraxa. You've really done it.
Hey, that's gonna break the economy, all right?
Yeah,
Old Tech Matter Weaver. This is monastery mentor, but for creatures.
yeah. Basically, um, it doesn't have prowess. Um, it
Yep.
could be fun. I don't think this is gonna be good, but this could be like a fun deck.
Yeah, I agree. Just neat, but we can move on. Sandstorm Salvager, back to making 3/3 golems. I think
Yeah,
if you're blinking this, it's kind of cool,
it's
but
not even worth it though.
yeah, yep. Simulacrum Synthesizer.
Yep, this is one of my Brutaclad
Yeah,
cards.
yeah, I
They're
know.
just rubbing these. So Constructs, I don't think there's been a single card that just creates a construct. They're all kind of like 4 mana effects with upside, like Karn the Planeswalker. Urza makes one randomly, like because he's not busted enough already, and then also Urza's Command makes one, but they're all 4 mana. And then Urza's Saga is a land that can make them. The land seems to think that they're worth 3 mana just to make one. So I think this card is good. I'm not sure if it's good enough in constructed. It's going to be amazing in artifact decks and commander, specifically Brutaclad. But I don't know. I think this deck could be a fun card. I don't. I think this is really not going to be like having played with Thousand Moon Smithy. Like I don't think it's. There's so many things that keep it from becoming like you know tier one constructed deck.
I agree. This card, I think this is so cool. I love it so much. I think it's very
Yeah.
powerful. I think the deck that utilizes it in a 60 card format doesn't exist and probably can't exist. Like it's a
Yeah,
3 mana
it would be
artifact.
Azorius artifact control, which is like so many problems with that deck.
Yeah,
But
3 mana artifact that just scries when it enters and does nothing else on the board, and except when another artifact mana value 3 or greater enters, you get a card
yeah,
construct. Like, you need to be able to survive doing nothing on your third turn. You need to then have a deck full of artifacts that are 3 mana value or greater and have them in your hand, which would probably be worth it if there were a bunch of really playable 3 CMC artifacts you wanted to be playing. I'm not sure there are.
yeah.
Um,
Celestis, I like that card. It's fun.
I mean, there are
They
fine
exist.
ones.
Yeah, they exist.
I
I'm
I really like the idea of playing this with the Asika's Chariot, because you're making sweet tokens to copy. It curves
yeah.
nicely, and then it's just cool. But then you're playing
But
a
then you're in Simic,
then
so
you're
you
in
lose
Simic, so you
automatically.
lose automatically. Took the words out of my
Yeah,
mouth. Sword of Wealth and Power.
love this one. Love
Yeah,
it.
I thought this was
Love it in equipment
busted
decks. Yeah,
until I realized that it doesn't give you the protection to attack through board states like the other swords do.
oh, come on. You're gonna have trample. You're gonna have flying. You're gonna get through there.
Well, if everything else is going your way, then yeah, this card can do a lot. Um, but I think that's a significant factor limiting its power. But it is strong. It is cool. But I think that stops it from being ridiculous.
I don't. I would almost rather have protection from instants and sorceries than pro colors. Um, in a lot of situations. And I think if you're playing this in Commander, there's always somebody that you can hit. If you have like a decent creature out there, there's always somebody who's like, "Oh no, I'm not going to block with my 1/2 that I need to draw me a card next turn." They're going to let you get a free cast, and maybe they won't, but it's been my experience that people will let attacks through if their board state can't effectively block it. And the payoff is really nice.
Payoff is sweet. All right, Vraska the Silencer. Uh, is this just bad Glissa?
No, this is a standard playable not Shieldred, Shelob. Um, very fun, but I don't think it's gonna see much play except for people trying to have fun.
Which is a goal that we can all
Yeah,
have.
yeah. I think if you want to play this card, I think you're gonna have fun. It's gonna bring you pleasure for sure.
And then you'll lose to Glissa. World
Yeah.
Walker Helm.
I mean, they're just taunting me at this point. They're
I
just
know.
saying,
Brutaclad.
"Hey,
Anything else?
yeah."
Anything else to say, or is it just
I mean,
put it in the Brutaclad file?
yes, it's It's fun. It's a 3 mana artifact, you know?
Sure is. Hey, look at that.
Yeah, it's going to make your constructs big real quick.
All right, Bristlebud Farmer. Um,
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about this one. We haven't had a bunch that have stood out as potentially constructed playable.
Yeah.
Um, and this probably isn't because 4 mana 5/5s never seem to
Well, it's
get
a
there.
4 mana green 5/5.
Right. 4 mana green 5/5s never seem to get there. But this one, again, I don't think this is going to make it into the top tables, but I think this can be a really cool card and some really cool decks that are fun. So this
Yeah.
is a 2 and 2 green, so 4 mana for a 5/5 plant druid creature with trample. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 food tokens, and then whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice the food. If you do, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand. So this is kind of like Trail of Crumbs without having to play Trail of Crumbs in your deck. And instead you get to play a 5/5 trample. That also makes 2 food when it enters the battlefield. Like, this is a beater and a value engine all in one card, and we've talked a lot about this in this going through this list of cards about things that rely on other things to be worth it. Like, you need this card is strong if you have X, Y, and Z. This card is strong by itself. Like, it makes its own value. This, this is a BYOV card. It shows up. It brings its food tokens. If they remove it, you're still up to food tokens, which ostensibly, if you're playing this, you have something to do with those in your deck. And then when it attacks, it's not like you draw a card when it attacks. You sacrifice a food, which can trigger a myriad of effects. But you also then get to mill 3 cards, so they go to your graveyard, which is value. And you can put a permanent card, the best permanent card for you from among those 3, into your hand. So there's some selection involved too. Graveyard synergy, artifact synergies, sacrificing food synergies on a 4 mana 5/5 trampler. This card's
It's
sweet.
it's
This card's
it's
sweet.
crazy pushed. I just have like severe reservations about getting burnt by every single card they printed in green. Looking like it has value, but it's actually just a creature that plays in a deck that doesn't have good removal.
Yeah. Yeah. Hostile Investigator. This is value all by itself. Is it
Most
good?
likely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I
this is a creature that comes in, makes the opponent discard a card, and then whenever one or more players discards one or more cards, you investigate only once per turn on a 4/3. It's a built-in 2 for 1, right? On a four
Yeah,
mana
but so is
creature.
everything at 4 mana.
Yeah,
So
and
you have to pay 2 additional mana just to get its value.
that's ultimately
So
where I'm going. Well, at that point, it's a 3 for 1, right? It's kind of
oh,
a
they
built-in three
discard.
for
Yeah,
one
yeah,
because you get the body,
yeah,
the discard, and the draw. Plus, any additional discards really pop off. But it is a 4 mana 4/3
yeah.
that
It's looking a little paltry out there.
I don't know, but it's 4 mana 3 for 1 with
6 mana, three
upside.
for one. 6 mana, 3 for 1, and you got to consider target opponent discards a card. That's not really a card. That's whatever they don't want in their hand.
Yeah,
So
I think you're right. It's just there's enough here that I'm intrigued, but I think I
it's also like
agree.
when you're trying to like play discard, you've already played all your discard effects are between like 1 and 3 mana, except for Aquazot, which you have to like pay at 5 and then attack with it on turn 6. So like,
Yeah, you're right. I think 4 mana is a little steep for this,
if
but
I
which
if I if I open 4 of them, I'm gonna try and brew around it, but I'm not expecting anything great.
I almost like threw up in my mouth when I said 4 mana is a little steep for this. Like, thinking about that as like a statement. Like, what do you mean 4 mana is too expensive for a 4/3 that makes them discard a card and makes you at least 1 clue token? But it is. I think it is. All right, Oko the Ringleader, another Planeswalker. What do we think about Oko the Ringleader?
I can't wait to play against people who are trying to make this work, so I can kill Oko planeswalkers as a fit of vengeance.
I will
I
say,
swear they designed this at the same time they did Eldraine, and you probably had 7 starting loyalty, and the -1 was a +1, and they were like, "Oh, whoops! Like, I want to do that again."
yeah, dust off the card file. So I think this card is pretty cool and pretty good, uh, with the exception of all of the text located in the top right corner of the card. And by text, I mean mana symbols, and by mana symbols, I mean those Simic colors.
Yeah.
Like, if this were in different colors, I think it could be really strong. But the fact that you have to be playing green and blue is just tough spot to be in.
Nope. Bye.
All right, Selvala, Eager Trailblazer. It does a lot. Do we care?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Not really.
Gisa, the Hellraiser. This is a lot of value for 5 mana. Do we care? Like, it's, and I guess
It's
I'll go
slow,
first.
grindy,
Yeah,
kind
this
of
is an
fun.
incredibly good 5 mana slow grindy card. The
Yeah.
upside here is that it has ward for 2 mana and pay 2 life. So if you think they're gonna spend like a 2 mana removal spell on this, they have to pay 4 mana to remove this and go down 2 life. That's not the worst trade for them removing your 5 drop. Um,
Yeah.
and it does a lot. Like, it makes two tapped 3/3 menace creatures every time you
When
commit a
you
crime.
commit a crime, which will probably be, the turn after.
Right, triggering once per turn. So, like, I agree that this card probably has too many of the like classic pitfalls that make cards not playable, but the like ceiling on this card is wild. It is a lot of
I mean,
value.
it's a couple 3/3 tokens. That's the ceiling.
Every turn.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because obviously you're gonna, yeah, no, you're not gonna have that much removal. I'm interested about the committing a crime thing, about revisiting all the cards that are like tap this to tap target opponent's creature. Like, I think all like the tap effects are gonna be really good for this. But
Maybe, but then you're playing those tap effects in your deck, which is
yeah,
tough.
but it's free.
Well, it's not free because you have to play those cards in your deck.
All right, all right, all right, all right.
All right, Harvester of Misery. This seems perfectly suited to slip right into
Nah,
the
it's garbage.
no those Cascady decks. It's more
Oh,
Trumpet and Carnosaur, right? Like, it's just more of
but
that.
it's well, it's just if you discover 5, you can hit this, which is a downside. Um, I think it's no. I'm
No.
not. I'm not big on this one.
All right, let's move on. All right, that brings us to Railway Brawler, which is a plot card. We haven't had too many of those to talk about thus far, but it is like a lot of cards we've talked about, a big, splashy green creature that does a lot, but can such things be good?
Most likely not.
Most likely not.
Most
Yeah.
likely not.
Yeah, I mean, it's strong. It's just, it doesn't
It's
scream.
insanely strong. It's insanely strong. But it's like it reminds me a lot of the I'm blanking on the name. They're the green. There's a cycle of them. Obviously, they're all cycles, but um, bigger. Oh my gosh. 5 mana card. Adds a bunch of +1/+1 counters to your creatures. Gives you a reduced casting cost by playing Phyrexian mana. Um,
Oh, Defiler of whatever the green one
Defiler
was.
of Vigor, right? Defiler of Vigor,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of that, where it's just like you're just asking for them to wipe your board, um,
Yeah, it's a
and you don't have
strong
any counterplay for that.
it's a strong card, but not strong in the ways that wins you the game. I think is going to become my
Yeah,
new
yeah.
mantra for these green
It's like,
cards.
here, I'm dropping my. You can plot it before, but on turn 5, I'm dropping my creature that you see here has reach and trample. That's great. But now my next creature is going to be even more powerful. Like, okay. Like, all right. So,
Yeah,
no.
if you can take turn 4 off, your turn 5 playing this into another 5 drop is potentially a great
Yeah,
way
but
to
that
play
means
it.
you've made it that far and you have two things that you're going to drop on turn 5 without paying anything on turn 4.
Yeah.
Like,
All right, we can
eh,
move on.
seems Magic Land.
It's good, but not in the ways that win you the game. Rakdos
Exactly.
the Muscle.
This is crazy strong, but also a 5 drop. Better colors though. Better colors.
Yeah, still two colors. It's gonna limit where it's played a little bit. And I think it's like this weird confluence of like different game plans. Like the sacrifice another creature to get indestructible
Yeah.
thing is like great for this is how you're going to beat down and
Activate. I
finish the game because they can't remove this thing, but then you're sacrificing other creatures, which is competing for the same resource. Oh no! Whenever you sacrifice another creature, never mind.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
the
yeah.
first
So
one was
you're
another
basically
activate
like
ability.
drawing a bunch of cards off of this protection ability.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think this is really strong.
It is. I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah.
It's yeah. If there's a Rakdos deck that wants this kind of thing at the top end, it's a great candidate.
Yeah. I've been playing like a Rakdos deck that's basically just like operates under the philosophy that creatures are just like incredibly broken. So he just plays creatures and some spot removal. And it's just like, oh, well, you have to remove this creature or else you lose. Okay, well, you have to remove this creature or else you lose. Oh, it's kind of ramped all the way up. It actually uses the Rakdos from last set as like the top end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Hopefully, they used all the removal by the time they play it, and then you're just drawing 2 cards a turn. And it's pretty successful. And this, this would go in a deck that's kind of like that, but you have to have other creatures on. I think this is good, but I don't think this is gonna warp anything too much.
All right, Terror of the Peaks reprint. So there's not too much to talk about. This is a known quantity. It's a sweet card. It's going to be a now much less expensive card.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I own foreign paper from my days of playing it in my Pioneer
Nice.
Indomitable Creativity deck, which is one of my favorite
Hmm.
decks of all time. So this is one of my favorite cards ever. It's just such a sweet card. Um,
Yes, it'll be a good litmus test to see how far creatures have been pushed in the last couple of years because this was one of the big baddies of Standard in 2021. So, does it still bring the heat? Yeah, we'll find out.
you will find out. The Gitrog Ravenous Ride. So I think this one's really good. Um,
Yeah, I think so too.
like for it's a 5 mana 6/5 trample haste, which is a heck of a beater if you need it to be. But if
Yeah.
if you saddle it, then you can sacrifice the creature that saddles it when it deals combat damage to a player to draw X cards, put X land cards from your hand on the battlefield tapped, where X is a sacrifice this creature's power. It's like very fine if you don't want to saddle it in situations where it doesn't make sense to, but if you do want to, then you're turning your earlier plays into this super power up. Um, it's like it doesn't
Yeah.
saddle one seems so easy to do. Um,
Yeah, I just have a hard time imagining a board state where you swing this in and it lives when you play it on turn 5. Unless they like swing out against you and you kind of like counter punch. But if they're swinging all out against you, then you're probably in a rough spot and you probably don't want to swing with this in the first place. So I have a hard time imagining a game state where this is effective because if they just board wipe, then you don't have anything to sacrifice on the saddle. Um, but it's definitely very powerful. Like you read everything and it just reads power to you. But I have a hard time seeing where this is going to be. I mean, you can force some advantageous trades, I think.
yeah, it's big and it has haste and it gets you value, so it
Yeah.
can like people will lose to this card for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. All right, Transmutation Font. It's 5 mana, makes artifacts, tutors artifacts, commander thing that's maybe
Yeah,
fine.
it reminds me of Tamio's Journal in a lot of ways. Seems very similar to that card, which is just not playable in Commander. You can play it in certain power levels, but it's like slightly behind where you need it to be. Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
eh.
Annie
Yeah.
Flash, the veteran. So this is a card that's been a bit on my radar because I've seen other people call
Okay.
it out as like, actually, this card looks wild. Um, so this is 6 mana, 3 colorless, and then Naya colors red, green, white
Hmm.
for a 4/5 legendary flash creature. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, return target permanent card, mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. When this card becomes tapped, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. This is awesome, but it's 6 mana in 3 colors. Is it? Can you play it? That's really my question.
Nobody's casting 6 mana creatures and then getting a 3 mana card from the graveyard. Nope.
Yeah,
You
but
can't even reanimate it. You have to cast it just to get the little trigger.
yeah,
And it's a 4/5. Like, no,
yeah.
I'm not even sure it's a good commander. Like,
No, I'm not sure it is either. It's again one of those cards that just does so much, but is it like gonna
there's so
win
many little things for 6 mana. I
you the game?
Yeah, I don't even think it matters that much that it has flash. It's so expensive.
Yeah, yeah. All right, last one in our top 40 lightning round. Vaultborn Tyrant.
All right,
Heck
well
of
this
a
is 7 mana.
green-beater.
This is 7 mana, so it's better. I really like push and pull as a card. I think this is like an amazing card to put in that deck where you just get this for a turn and it dies. Because you're gonna probably draw like multiple cards and still be left with a copy of Voltborn Tyrant. So I like it in that deck, but that deck is a hop, skip, and a jump away from tier one. So other than that, there's a lot of other 7 mana stuff that you can bring back.
Yeah. And so I think just on that point, like so many of these cards are like powerful that we've talked about, but are they
Yeah,
good? And there's like a difference there. And I think something I'm realizing with this set is it not only has so many cards in itself that like this has been one of the hardest sets for me to ingest in my brain, like because there are so
yeah,
many cards and they have so much text and like most of them, and so there's probably a card here that's going to be bonkers broken that like my eyes just glazed over halfway through the second paragraph on it
yeah,
and didn't realize how good it was, which is just the risk you run when this much new material is coming out. But like there are so many powerful cards here, but we've been getting really powerful cards for like a couple years now, so it more just feels like there's this pool of like really powerful cards and it's just getting bigger, but it's not getting
yeah.
like the water
Is this
level
better than
isn't
Titan of Industry?
right. It's
Maybe
like
not.
yeah, there's just this reservoir of really strong cards that you can play, and who's to say if one's better than another
Yeah.
because they're all
It's
really
gonna be like the cards that
strong.
are gonna see play are like the little pins that are gonna hold the deck together, that are gonna
Yeah,
like make the deck function.
right.
This
The
is just kind of
efficient
like the means
pieces.
to the end at the end. It's like,
I agree. I was getting that with a lot of these. It's like there are a ton of really powerful cards that just are they better than the other really powerful cards we've gotten that are similar to them? It's like now we have two
oh,
awesome
yeah.
cards.
Now there are two of them. Yeah, well, spend your mythic wild cards and find out.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's transition to the I guess cheaper cards. Some of these
Yes.
quote unquote
Yeah, these are
cheaper
just kind of
cards
like
are
the fun little
still
cards we think will be fun.
pre-ordering fairly high for some reason. Like this set is just whack. But these are
Yeah.
outside the top 40, so ostensibly at one point they should be cheaper. Um,
Yeah.
and we can just run down this list. We have some commons, some uncommons, some interesting rares to talk about. Um, so this is more where we live, at the bottom of the pile, but there's some interesting stuff down here too. So the first card to go over is Nurturing Pixie, which is 1 white mana for a 1/1 flying fairy rogue. Two interesting creature types. When it enters the battlefield, return up to one target non-fairy, non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. If a permanent was returned this way, put a +1/+1 counter on Nurturing Pixie. Um, Look, 1 mana is basically as cheap as things get, and this like a 1/1 flyer for one is not very good, but a 1/1 flyer for one that does other stuff that's good has been very good.
Could be a 2/2 flyer.
It can be a 2/2 flyer for one, and it can be a 2/2 flyer for one that you benefit from returning your Thraben Inspector to your hand so you can play it again and get another clue. Like, I haven't figured out exactly what this looks like, but like we're getting Tiny Bones Joins Up, which is a 1 mana enchantment that makes them discard when it ETBs to go with Hopeless Nightmare, which also does that. So like you can play
Oh my
that
gosh,
turn
I
one.
just I just felt my stomach turn. I was thinking like, yeah, this could be like a value piece for like Boros, the Thraben Inspector and the
No, we're
Ladarian
going
Epicure,
bigger than that,
and then you're
baby.
like, I'm just gonna reoccur my 1 mana discard spells, you sick person, and
Yeah.
then you can sacrifice this later for value. Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
I'm just something in there could be really neat. So I like this card. I think it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
there's plenty of like enchantments and artifacts that you can reuse ETBs.
Exactly. And
Um,
your card doesn't have to be that good if it costs 1 mana is like really one of the
yeah,
truisms. And this card might be kind of good. So 1 mana could do a lot of work.
yeah.
Next up we have Aloe Alchemist. Why don't you take
Yeah,
us through
this
Aloe
is
Alchemist?
I just really like this in Picnic Ruiner decks. I don't know where they went since this last set came out, but I just think this is like you plot it for 2
So
and
yeah,
you
just
give someone plus.
walk us through the whole
Yeah,
card.
so like the play pattern is like you plot it for 2 and then someone gets +3/+2 and trample until end of turn. That's not a joke. Trample is really good and um like any creature. It's sorcery speed, so they're gonna know where to block. But you throw this on a picnic ruiner, all of a sudden you have a 5/4 double strike trampler swinging in on turn 3. Seems pretty good if they don't have removal. They're gonna have a lot of damage coming into them, and then you get to cast it for free later on. Like I think this is a really interesting way on like a combat trick where it's not really a trick, but it is giving like stats and value and you're getting a 3/2 trampler that you can use, Monstrous Rage or whatever to buff up for the next round of attacks. So I'm just really curious to see how valuable these cards are because this seems like if you just had a 2 mana 3/2 enters the battlefield, give another creature +3/+2 and trample until end of turn, I think it would be really good. So I just want to see where this card ends up.
Yeah, and this card isn't exactly that, right? Because you are missing a turn of it being on the board.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this
But you're
card,
also not overcommitting to the board.
right, which is a good thing to keep track of. Lots of sweepers out there these
Hmm.
days. Um, so this card, it just objectively for 2 mana does quite a bit. I think it's interesting play pattern wise, insofar as it'd be nicer if you could play the creature before the pump spell. Like it, when we talk about adventure
Yeah,
spells, we
yeah.
always talk about them like curving into themselves. And
Hmm.
in the most recent Eldraine set, they did a couple that curved backwards. Like both sides were good,
Yeah,
but you couldn't
yeah.
really
Very,
do them
very
in the
diminished.
order that you would want to do them.
Yeah.
Which was interesting design space because it creates conflict. Like this card, you typically want to play your creatures to the board and then make them bigger when you're all attacking. This one, you have to have something to pump first,
Hmm.
and then it comes down later. So I think that's like just an interesting
Yeah. This card
design
just
thing.
kind of made it just struck a little like I'm interested to see how this card does.
Yeah, I
Could never get played, but I think there is like a Gruul beatdown deck that could definitely benefit from trample, and this is kind of just another way to give it trample and a body. I don't know.
on and uncommon, which matters for
Yeah, yeah,
arena when
yeah.
all your mythics are drained
No,
by. So
if this was in rare, I would be like, nah. But just like it being an uncommon and just like just curious.
yeah, no, it's a good call out. Next up, we have Caustic Bronco. Um, so this is a 2 mana, one in a black, 2/2 snake horse mount creature. It has Saddle 3, and it reads when it attacks, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. You lose life equal to that card's mana value if it isn't saddled, otherwise, each opponent loses that much life. So I would like to draw everyone's attention to a card called Dark Confidant, which is the obvious
Hmm.
comp here. So that famously was a 2 mana 2/1 that at the beginning of your upkeep you revealed the top card of your library, lost life equal to its mana value, and put it in your hand. That was a good card for a really long time. I think if they printed it these days, I'm not sure it would see any play in standard, which is wild to say. Um, so, I mean, maybe it would, but that means that I guess even though this card reads very strong, um, unless you're saddling it, it's likely going to attack and draw you a card and lose some life and then be blocked and die. But like that's not the worst if it's trading because you're probably not going to attack if it's not trading. If you saddle this, like if you curve this on 2 into a 3 power creature on 3, which is like your Gix or your
Yeah.
Karavek, which we'll talk about later. And then you attack, you're drawing a card, maybe forcing them to block and trade with this, and doing some damage to them from the loss of life trigger potentially. So I have reservations about this card because it is a 2 mana 2/2 that has to attack to do anything, but it doesn't have to connect. Like I get really worried about when it deals damage to a player type triggers because that can be really hard to do. But it doesn't have to connect; it just has to attack
Yeah,
to get you your
and it
card
only really
back.
has to attack once. Like especially if you're on the play. I like this card a lot just because if you're on the play, you can just get an insane advantage, swinging in, forcing a trade, drawing a card, making someone lose life. Like I think this is a card that you want on the play and on the draw. You just kind of like 2 mana 2/2. I can trade it out for a different card basically. I don't know. I like it. I like it. I think that it could definitely see play. A lot of these like expensive mythics, like I think it has a better chance of seeing it play than a lot of these expensive mythics.
Yeah, I think so too. Who knows if it will, but it's 99 cents, and loot the key to everything is $38 right now. So it's
Yeah,
like
I think it's gonna like I think it's gonna see a lot more play than that.
exactly. Okay, next up we have Avon Interrupter. Why don't you walk us through what this card is and why you like it?
Oh my goodness! Goodbye, Cavern of Souls. And we're in white, baby. Let's go. Love this for Azorius Flyers, tempo-based decks, flash flying. You basically counter the spell, and they get to play it later for 2 mana. But you see it coming, and it also stops spells from opponents cast from graveyards or from exile. Costs 2 more to cast, so that's gonna stop like a lot of decks. A lot of things will incidentally be, um, halted or taxed. So all those like Ren's resolve effects, all the things that are spamming cards from exile. That's not gonna happen. Um, I I like this card a lot for tempo. I like it for and when it's exiled, you see it coming, and you can they have to wait a whole turn before they can play it at sorcery speed. So if you put this down on a counterspell, that counterspell is just gone. So
Mm-hmm.
I do like it.
Yeah, there's a lot to like on this card. I think that last line of text, spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 more to cast, is kind of like I think people will focus on the like enter the battlefield, exile target spell, it becomes plotted because like that's
Yeah,
the splashy thing that it does. But I think the like kind of ambient hate can't be overlooked. There's a lot of casting from graveyards that can happen in Magic. There's a lot of casting from exile that can happen in Magic.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Cascade, right? Cascade is exiled. Discover. It's all casting from exile. So
yeah, exactly. So this card, it is a 3 mana 2/2 flyer, so maybe it just is a little wimpy. But all this has to do is catch a spell that they try and resolve. Like whatever they play on turn 3 or 4, you're gonna just hit with this, and they'll get to play it next turn for 2. But then you have an extra 2/2 flyer, and you've bought yourself a turn, and you just have a chance to set up and prepare for what they're gonna do. Like this card, I could see it just being like not enough because ultimately it's a 2/2 flyer, but I do like it and think that it could see quite a bit of play.
Yeah, it'll give you another turn to swing in with your other little wimpy bodies and clock somebody.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Claim Jumper.
This is a auto include in almost every white commander deck.
All right, read it for
Um,
us.
Yeah, it's a 3 mana 3/3 with vigilance, so we're a nice spot right there. ETB's opponent controls more lands than you. Search your library for a plains card and put that onto the battlefield tapped. We've seen that before, no big deal. Oh, and then if an opponent controls more lands than you, repeat this process once. Oh, so it does it twice. So it's like a better cultivate with a body attached, white.
That you can
This
blink.
is insane. That you can blink if they still have more lands than you, because you just caught up 2 lands. Like, if you're playing white, there's always going to be someone spamming down lands, just be like, look at me, I'm playing Simic and Commander. And you're going to say, okay, well, I actually have good cards, and, now I have mana to cast them. So, I love this card. I think that the price is actually kind of fair compared to, like, some of the other prices we're seeing here. I'm not expecting this to fluctuate too much. This is going to go in a lot of Commander decks.
Yeah, I will flag. It is also a rabbit, and I think in Bloomborough we're gonna get rabbity things.
Ooh,
So this
okay.
is definitely an early plant for Bloomborough. So it's always interesting to keep an eye on those little seeds that they
Yeah.
plant early. Um,
3/3 vigilance, like, hey, like that's fine. It's
well, it
fine.
is. So here's the thing: is like that is a decent body, but does it matter in Commander? Like obviously the ability matters.
It'll hold a sword, it'll swing in, it'll get attack triggers, but no, it's not the end all be all. But if you play this 3 mana and get 2 lands on the battlefield, then that is just you know all you can ask from a card.
That's true. You're not always gonna get two lands though.
No, no, I'd say most times, like especially if you're not going first, and if you get 1 land, then like okay, it's still all right. Like there's like a lot of green creatures are 3 mana 1/1s that ETB gets you 1 land. So I'm I'm pretty high on this even if it just gets you 1 land.
Yeah, and
But
it's
I'm
worth
expecting
noting.
it to get you 2 lands a lot of the time.
It's worth noting that this can get you a plains card, so that counts Triumph, Shocklands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Pretty good.
But you're in
Pretty
mono
good.
white, so that's how you live.
Well,
No,
this card's white. You can play it
yes,
in a.
yes, yes. You can play it in Jeskai and
Yeah,
ramp up with the
exactly.
yep.
All right, next up we have Karavek the Punisher. So this is a 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a legendary creature human warlock. It's a 3/3. Whenever you commit a crime, exile up to one target black card from your graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy. If you do, you lose 2 life. So, if I had to pick a card that was going to see constructed play that I haven't heard other people talking about very much in that context, it would probably be this one
Hmm.
because this has a lot of obvious knocks on it. Like it's a 3 mana 3/3 that doesn't have an ETB, and it you need to then follow it up with crime committing and have cards in your graveyard, and then you have to pay for the cards and you lose 2 life. Like I get all that, but at the same time, like you play this on 3 and untap with it, and then you removal spell something, and then you have 2 mana left over to exile another interaction spell you played earlier in the game or a creature that you traded with, and then you can cast that and you get it back. And then just for the like, this is one of those things that only has to get you one card
Yeah, as
back
soon
to
as your
be
go for the
really
throat
worth it.
triggers a Aussies or another go for the throat, or it's like
Yeah, and it's
but your opponent's gonna have a hard time maintaining a board state.
yeah, this card can take over because like you go for the throat on one turn to trigger this, and then the next time that you commit a crime, that go for the throat sitting in your graveyard, like it feeds
Yeah,
itself.
yeah, it's Doomblade tribal. It seems like.
Yeah, which just could be pretty good. So I think this card could obviously be totally unplayable and you'll never see it, or like I think it has a lot of potential upside. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this card. We'll see how it goes. Up next, we have Stoic Sphinx, which is a 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue Sphinx creature. It's a 5/3 with flash and flying, and it has hexproof as long as you haven't cast a spell this turn. Um, this card seems amazing. To me, the question is if there's a deck that exists that wants to be doing this, like that is playing essentially at 100% instant speed and is also
Oh
trying to
yeah, we're
beat
going.
down.
Hey, Arrington Giada, we're going Flash Flyers, baby. It's
Yeah,
the truth.
I mean, this is a 4 mana flash. Like, forget the hexproof thing. This
Yeah,
is a 4 mana flash flying 5/3.
yeah,
Like, that's a 4 turn clock. That's
yeah.
you only
Five gets
deploy it
there quick.
when you
Five
have a
gets there
window,
quick in the air.
and it trades with a lot of relevant things. Thinking about vein rippers just on my mind from all my pioneer play, um, but it does trade with vein ripper. It's and then it does have hexproof as long as you haven't cast a spell this turn. So if you find your window
Yeah.
on the end of their turn to slip this down, and then
Yep.
it's just going to be a pain to deal with. Like this 5 does get there, and this reminds me a lot of Vine Mare, um,
Yeah.
which was a really good card. Like this, it's just this. If the deck exists to support this, this will be a card that I lose to a lot.
Yeah. No, I think that I'm definitely gonna be playing a lot of Arrington Giada, Flash creatures, flying creatures. Um, I really like that archetype. I think this will be a good addition to it.
Nice. Up next, we have Insatiable Avarice. Why don't you read us this card and tell us what's sweet
Yeah,
about
this
it?
is one of those spree cards. It has two options. So it's one black mana, and then in addition, you may pay two colorless to search your library for a card, shuffle, and put it on top. Or at an additional two black pips, just target player draws three cards and loses three life. So obviously, this is going in all of your mono black burn decks. You can 3 mana for three life. No, uh, I was just thinking about the card that it compares to where you pay, 3 mana of different colors to draw three and lose up to three life.
Painful
That
Truths.
gets and painful truths. Thank you. That gets a lot of play in Commander, and I think that a three-color deck with black versus a mostly black deck, the mostly black deck is going to get more play. And oh, if you want one of those cards to be something in particular, throw in an additional 2 mana, or you want to put something on top of your deck to trigger, your Caustic Bronco or something else. You can do that. Whatever the team up Demir team up card is that cares about spells on the top of your library's mana values. Um, I think that it's a really strong card. I think that's going to be a staple in black commander decks, and maybe even see a little play in standard too.
Yeah, so this, I agree, this is a very good commander card. There are tons of those. I think this is the card that will win the award for card I see played the most in decks that have Shieldred and are trying to be too cute and could play better cards that would win them the game more often, but really want to have Shieldred down and then make me draw 3 cards and lose 9 life. Um, like
Pretty good. Pretty
well,
good.
is it good or is it cute? Because I think it's cute, and I think this will be a like arena ladder mono black casual favorite that they'll win the game because they have Shieldred in that scenario, but they'll think that they win the game because they played Insatiable Avarice after they stuck a Shieldred. So I see
You
this.
also gain three life if you target yourself with a children. I mean, this pairs really well with one of the best cards in one of the best colors, and can also tutor on top of it. So I think this is a good card.
It is.
I don't know if it's optimal. I'll agree with you. I'm not sure that it's optimal in 60 card formats, but I think this is going to be a good card to play.
All right. Well, next up we have a common. We're going on a spree of spree
Are
cards.
so common.
That's right. So this Phantom Interference. It's one blue mana for an instant. It has spree. So you can pay three colorless mana in addition to that one blue to make a 2/2 white spirit creature token with flying, and or one additional colorless mana to counter target spell unless its controller pays two. So my interest in this is mostly in that I've been playing a lot of Transmogrify decks recently. I am a sucker for Transmogrify and Indomitable Creativity decks. They are one of my favorite
Hmm.
archetypes that exist, and I've been playing a lot of Make Disappear in those decks. Because counterspells are really good right now in Explorer and Pioneer. Just they line up well with the meta. And Make Disappear is obviously a better counterspell because you can copy it with the casualty ability. But this is almost as good of a counterspell. It's still a 2 mana counter target spell unless its controller pays two spell.
Yeah.
But it also has the upside where it can be a 4 mana flash in a creature at the end of their turn to set up your Transmogrify play, or counter their spell and get a 2/2 creature for 5 mana.
Yeah, for the low cost of 5 mana.
It's all
Yeah, no, I
upside
think
though,
make.
like
Yeah, I know, I agree. Most of the time when you cast make disappear, you're not using the casualty, just kind of like an upside. So it's like, which upside do you want? And I think if you are doing Smogrify, or you're like, you care about getting a body in there because you're playing Azorius Flash Flyers,
that's right
you
with counter spells.
it all goes back to that. That is going to be the deck that I am hitting up as soon as the set drops. But
That
yeah,
and
no, I think this
Brutaclad.
is it's a different. Well, Brutaclad, I might just ignore. I might just like say no. I will not. I refuse. I refuse. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean for a common, craft these on Arena. This
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
is
It's good
can't miss.
value. It's best value for sure.
All right, Smuggler's Surprise. I will preface this by saying this is my pick for best card in the set, which I feel like I take a
Yeah.
flyer on one of these every time against consensus, and it's not in the top 40 price wise. So let's explore this for a second. So this is another spree card.
Yeah. Well, I think
As
it's crept up there. It's actually slightly more expensive than a few since we even made the list. So prices
yeah,
are
it's
fluctuating. But
beating out
yes,
Anti Flash, but
it's yeah,
not one
exactly.
of the not one of the leaders on pre-order prices. So 1 mana spree instant. So your options here are for 2 colorless mana. You can mill 4 cards, put 2 creature and or land cards from among the milled cards into your hand, plus 4 colorless and 1 green. You may put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield, and plus 1 colorless creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Where to begin? So, general disclaimer that like maybe the deck for this doesn't exist, but if there is a deck playing green
Willing to
and
put one
creatures,
green mana into their two, I guess, for the other ability. But yeah,
playing creatures, this card is awesome. So like, okay, so not only is this a ton of value insofar as like it's an instant, so it works particularly well with the scalability of spree cards because you can just pick your moment to do it. You can leave up mana and just see what makes the most sense for this card and find the spot where it does the most.
hmm,
But so many of the like all three of the modes of this
we're
cost
good.
about what they should.
Yeah.
Like this is okay, so this is a 3 mana instant, mill 4 cards, put 2 creatures and or land cards from among them into your hand. So that's graveyard synergies.
Yeah.
That's a 3 mana draw 2 with some selection in a deck that has mostly creatures and lands.
At instant speed and green.
At instant speed and green, like quick study, eat your heart out. Um,
Hmm.
or it's a heroic intervention. 2 mana creatures you
It's not
control
quite heroic intervention, but
Creatures you
yeah.
control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It's only creatures you control with power 4 or greater, but those are ostensibly the ones you really don't want to die.
Yeah.
So in a deck that's playing big creatures and are petrified of board wipes that aren't Farewell or Sunfall, which is most of them. But like,
No comment. No comment.
thanks Wizards for Mass Exile. Um, like this is gonna save your creatures from board wipes, which is a problem big creature decks have. So it like fits to address a weakness with a flexible main board card in a creature heavy deck with big creatures. Even if this just like blanks one removal spell, that's reasonable
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
2 mana. But then you can also have it be a 5 mana, a 6 mana, put any two creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield at instant speed,
That is the killer right there. That is the
and you
bomb.
can do more than one of these. Like if you have the available
Yeah.
mana, which green decks can have, like this can be an 8 mana mill four kind of draw two, put two creatures into play. This can be a put two creatures into play. Your big creatures gain hexproof and indestructible for absolute blowout blocks. Like
Yeah.
this, like what? Like I just,
Yeah. The
I
only downside is green, but yeah, it is incredibly powerful.
like wow. Like I just have a hard time believing this card
We talked
exists.
about like last set where they were like felt like they were really pushing Boros as like a color combination. They actually managed to put Boros tokens, Convoke or whatever, onto the map as like one of the preeminent decks in the format. I really feel like they're pushing green just in general. Like they're like, oh shoot, we can't just like have green cards be the same as all the other colors, but not have any removal in the color. Like they're, I feel like they're really pushing it. I don't think we mentioned it. But there's also like Colossal Rattle Worm, where they're just like really pushing the envelope on green this set in terms of what the like stat lines and payoffs can be. So maybe they finally made it relevant,
Right, so
but
which would
we'll see.
completely like delegitimize all of our snarky comments about green, like cards not being good because they're green. Like if they're pushing them,
Yeah.
maybe they are good. So who knows? But
I think the problem is that you have to play green with a color that can actually interact with the board.
yeah,
That's
well,
the issue.
you can. Like that's an
Yeah,
option.
yeah.
All right, another spree card, which is not the last time I'm going to say that. 3 steps ahead, 1 blue mana, instant. 1 colorless, 1 blue, additional cost, counter target spell. 3 mana, colorless, additional, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control. Plus an additional 2 colorless mana, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So again, this one I'm a little less bullish on than Smuggler's Surprise because for all the reasons I just mentioned. This one isn't quite like each mode isn't quite worth it mana wise as much as that one is, but this is still a very flexible, very valuable card. Like if you're
Yeah, this
interested
is
in
it's very good.
playing a deck that wants to have counter spells available to them, this is a cancel, but it's like the best cancel ever printed. And interestingly, the most wild thing about this is it's you have 3 mana up and you're holding this as either this one card is by itself either the counter spell that you use to catch whatever they play, or the card advantage card that you play when they don't play something. And I guess it's not technically card advantage because
Yeah, it's
it's
selection, card selection, but it's
right.
very it's pretty
Like
valuable.
if they don't play
Draw
something
two,
you want to
discard a
counter
card
and
is
you want to,
fine.
yeah, so if it's like if you want to counter it, it fills the same spot on the curve and in and of itself gives you optionality. Plus later in the game, this is a 5 mana counter any spell, draw two, discard a card. This is
Mhm.
a 4 mana copy an artifact or creature you control at instant speed, which is in
Yep.
by itself kind of sweet.
They're
Like
just they're mocking my Brutaclad deck list right now. Every turn they're saying
it all
you're
comes back
running
to
counter
Brutaclad.
spell in your Brutaclad deck. Fool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that these effects are great. I think there's so many fun things to do at instant speed, and having like talk about like selection at instant speed. Like the more cards you have that are instants, the better all your instants become because you get to cast the right thing at the right time. Well, this is basically a selection of I don't even know the permutations. What you can do like six different options here, or I don't know exactly, but you have all these options and combinations of options to put in your as options, which makes this card in itself better as well as all of your other instants.
Right. That's a really good point that like, yeah, instant scale with optionality and all these spree instants have optionality built in, which is wild. Um, let's move on to a sorcery spree card. Yet another
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Take us.
Which is in the correct color to be relevant. Is Lively Dirge. This is a 2 mana sorcery, one and a black, and you have two options to add in here. Search a library for a card, put it in your graveyard, then shuffle. So it's like an entomb. And then an additional two, you can return up to two creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. There's so many like really cool things you can do with this deck, and there also has to be a combo, right? Like there has to be two creatures that are mana value 4 or less that go infinite with each other. I don't know. You'll have to look up exactly how that works. But 3 mana Entomb is pretty good actually. It's it's pretty cost efficient. They've printed several Entomb effects in like the last 5 years, and they're all always like either 4 mana and it happens the next turn, or 5 mana. And then you can also pay 2 additional mana to return two creature cards, mana 4 or less on from the graveyard to the battlefield. You can think of this as a 5 mana Sheoldred. They could also be a Fraction Obliterator. They could also be like, any other black 4 drop that's in your deck that goes onto the battlefield. You can also, if you're playing a Reanimator list for 3 mana, just search for your Atraxa, or even like, say, I don't think Atraxa is the right thing to reanimate this time. I want to reanimate, Galta or whatever it is. Chuck it in the graveyard, and then you're off to the races. And then you can also just play it for value, like 4 mana, put two creatures from your graveyard onto the battlefield. They killed your bats. Oh, okay, my bats are going to come back, and they're going to take your next two cards. So I really like this card, especially at uncommon. It's going to be really fun to see. There's a lot of really powerful things that this card can do.
Yeah, I wasn't really sold until you floated like the floor as a 5 mana Shieldred, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
Or if you don't want a Shieldred, then you can get whatever other 4 drop you want in
well,
your deck.
I want Shieldred. Let me put it
Yeah,
that
yeah, you probably will.
way.
But sometimes Archfeet of the Dross, or Phyrexian Obliterator. It doesn't even have to be in black. It's not.
Right,
It's
right.
really, you want a 4 drop creature. Here you go. You have it now. You've been grinding this out. You have a couple creatures in your graveyard. Okay, 4 mana. They're coming back. You want to reanimate a specific thing. Even if you just want to make sure you hit your, you know, uh, anything. It doesn't even have to. It can't. Doesn't even have to be a creature.
That's true. To
So
put it in your graveyard.
yeah,
All right, Scorching Shot, another uncommon.
yeah. I think this is talking about colors having problems. I think this is like the most pushed. Are there any two red 2 mana cards in red that deal 5 damage?
So there are a couple, none as restrictionless as this. So
Yeah,
Tears of Valakut is an instant that can't be countered that does 5 damage to a flying creature.
yeah. That's
Roast
that's useless.
Roast is 5 damage to a non-flying creature for one in a red.
Yeah,
This this is 2 red mana for a sorcery that does 5 damage to a target creature,
yeah,
which is new space
yeah.
as a red removal aficionado because I can't stop playing Izzet decks. This is interesting. I think being 2 red will actually matter quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a very nice tool for red to have. The sorcery aspect of it does concern me, as does it only targeting creatures and not also planeswalkers. But it is, I mean, there are times you just really want to get that Shieldred out of there, right? And it's
Yeah, that's exactly where I
simple.
envision this. There's not a lot of creatures. We just mentioned Archery to the Dross, but that doesn't see too much play. Archery to the Dross, Shieldred, they have their 7 drops basically. Which if they have down and you're playing like a red deck, then you're probably already lost. But I
Hmm.
think this is like black and white have premier removal, and now red has like tier 2 removal as opposed to just hoping everything is 3 toughness or less,
Right, which is big.
which is a fool's game. Yeah.
I know they put 4 on so many things. I'm still mad
Yeah,
about
let's just put
Adeline.
4 on it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, slick sequence. Take us
Oh
through
boy,
this
is
one.
it prowess, baby? Is it prowess is popping off. We're gonna be spamming spells, dealing damage, drawing cards, getting prowess triggers. Love it. That's the end of the story for this one.
So this is a red and a blue for an instant.
Yeah.
Deals 2 damage to any target. If you've cast another spell this turn, draw a card. I love all things Is It. I don't know if I believe in this one.
Oh, to non-believers.
2 mana is just literally twice as much as 1 mana in prowess.
Look, if you're playing prowess, you want 1 mana red mana shocks and you want 1 mana blue ops, and now they're both on the same card. Like this is the gravy right here. We'll bring you around. We'll bring you around.
It's only both if you've also played another
You're gonna be
spell.
casting other spells. Trust me. You're gonna be.
Not if you have 3 mana and 2 slick sequences in your hand.
Well, then you have an abundance of riches, and on turn 4, you're gonna be having a really good turn.
No,
Yep.
you're going to be paying 4 mana that has to be specifically blue, red to deal 2 damage to 2 targets and draw a card.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll take it. I'll take it. And get 2 prowess triggers? Oh, yeah.
All right, I
It's game
believe in
over,
Is It
baby.
Prowess. I'm not sure I
Yeah.
believe in Slick Sequence, but
Uh, we'll bring you around. We'll bring you around.
I cannot wait. All right, the key to the vault,
Yeah.
which wins the award for card I'm going to type wrong in deck lists the most from this
Oh,
set,
yeah, yeah.
because I'm just going to type
Yeah.
key to the vault, but it's the
Yeah.
key to the vault.
Isn't there a key to the vault already?
There's vault take key.
No, no. I
It's
think
not
there's
there.
like a key to the vault. We'll figure it out. But yeah, for whatever reason they added a the to it.
It's legendary.
But
It's
yeah, they're trying to put equipment in blue, and they're trying to make it do blue things, which is interesting to me. So whenever the equipped creature, so it's 2 mana to play, 3 mana to equip. So you could drop this on a 1/1 flyer and swing on turn 3 if you wanted to. Equipped creature deals combat damage to a player. Look up to that many cards at the top of your library. You may exile a non-land card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. So free spells, baby. Free card advantage, free spells. All you got to do is play blue equipment cards. I thought this would be a good time to announce to you and the 3 other people still listening at hour 7 of the podcast that I will be reorganizing my Boros equipment deck into a Aragorn Jeskai equipment deck, and not really much of an advantage other than playing Aragorn and his sword, same deck, but this will be one of the cards I'm considering. It's pretty interesting. What do you think?
I think this card stinks. Like I guess in
Oh
Commander,
my
there's the
gosh.
caveat like
Yeah, it's a big commander thing, and I think you could have fun with it in standard too.
I don't know, dude. Okay. So I will cede the point that anything can be good in Commander, so this could
All
be good
right,
in
let's
Commander.
go.
If we're talking 60 cards, you're going to spend turn 2 playing this, which does nothing.
Hmm.
Pay 3 mana to spend turn 3 equipping this to your
Yes.
1 drop, which maybe
Yes.
has 2 power, but probably just has 1.
We'll take 1 power. That's
To
fine.
then attack, it has to connect with a player,
It will. It will, I believe.
and then because you equipped it to a shrimpy creature, you're only going to look at 1 or 2 cards.
We're dropping shoulder it, baby.
You
Right off
can,
the top.
I mean, you could just not play this card and then play Shieldred on turn
Hey.
4. I guess.
Hey.
And then you can cast
A man
an
can dream.
one of those cards without paying its mana cost, which means you have to build your deck around like big splashy payoffs that like are then
All
going
right,
to
all right.
make
We're
your hand
dropping
terrible.
insatiable avarice, putting a big thing on top, and then swinging with our 1/1.
Okay,
Is that okay?
just do that with Caustic Bronco and Shadow of Mortality.
Hey, come on. All right, I do agree this card is terrible from a constructed standpoint, but I do think it's fun, and I do think that I'm going to be putting it in my new to be Jeskai equipment deck
All
because
right,
I'm leaning into this blue equipment they're giving us.
all right.
I'm gonna try it.
Cannot wait to see what this looks like in Commander because I know I won't see it in 60 card formats.
Yeah, yeah. If someone's playing this in 60 card formats, they're living on a dream. But we support that. We
That's
love
right.
dreams.
Love
Yeah.
the Dreamers. All right, the last card on our list of our underappreciated cards in this set for Rossification.
Yeah, this is something I'm a sucker for. Is they love putting these like 3 mana enchantments in red. It's been a while since we had one. Uh, at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Pretty bad. Target creature you control gains menace and haste until end of turn. Pretty good. There's so many cards that are gated by needing attack triggers to actually pop off, and the attack triggers are always pretty powerful. Just being able to give something haste without paying additional mana is extremely valuable. Menace is like a really nice upside because it's likely that they're gonna, connect unless you get or force a favorable trade. And it kind of compares unfavorably to Rhythm of the Wild in a couple places, except that was a very strong card in its standard. It had a similar effect, except it doesn't require green to cast, and instead of being uncounterable, I believe that was the additional effect. You can give something +2/+0, so not as good in that way. But I just love these effects, and I think that putting them down and casting your 6 drop and actually getting an attack trigger off is super super useful.
Okay, so the seasoned Magic player in me sees this card and like scoffs and says not a chance. But
Hmm.
let me walk through the ways that it might be kind of sweet. So you're taking turn 3 off to play this, which is always really
Okay,
tough.
let's go Bristlebud Farmer for example. So you play this turn 3. Turn 4, you play your Bristlebud, and it doesn't need to wait to attack and then it'll attack with as a menace, so it's likely to hit. It's going to be able to sack the food and give you the card draw effect or the impulse effect, and it's going to hit on turn 4
Right, right.
instead of
So
getting
so
board
where I
wiped.
was going in my
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
through
yeah.
it
Go
is
for it. Go for it.
you're giving up a lot of tempo and
Hmm.
momentum in your ostensibly pretty aggressive deck to play this on
Yeah,
turn 3. But it actually gives you value on turn 3 because you can use the +2/+0 on a 2 drop that you've played earlier. So
yeah.
it does,
Or give it menace.
or give it menace. So it does help you on turn 3. And then on
Yeah,
turn 4, whatever you played is getting to attack the same turn that your 3 drop would have been able to attack.
yeah. Now you're talking. Now you're
So it's
talking.
making it has a way of making up some of that lost time. I don't know if that makes up for the fact that you're losing that time, but it is
Well, the thing
in
you dropped on turn 2 is Picnic Ruiner, and now it has double strike on its attacks.
maybe this is a strong card for like it doesn't look strong. I'm
No, it.
I think I
Yeah.
lost it. Like I can't imagine I actually read this card before this very moment because it's like just some enchantment that doesn't do anything. But when you think about the play patterns, this does seem kind of good. I think the problem, in addition to being a 3 mana enchantment that doesn't impact the board by itself, is that it's really slanted towards wanting to attack all the time. Like it does something on turn
Yeah, on
3.
combat of your turn. Yeah.
It does something on your turn 3 if you can attack with your 2 drop, and it does something on turn 4 if you have a 4 drop you can be attacking. Like you just really need to be attacking with this, which sometimes your creature deck needs to be able to pivot into like clog up the board defensive stance, which
Yeah.
this doesn't
I,
lend itself to as well, and
I
is
like
more of
these
a dead
cards
card.
against control as well. It's like they can sit and board wipe, but you're just gonna keep hitting them every single turn with for like more and more damage.
Yeah, no, I do think that's pretty sweet. Yeah, so the more I like this card more than you ever could have convinced me that I would like this card
All right.
before we had this
I,
conversation. there's
yeah,
there's
I feel
something
like
here
I
which
feel
is
like I did actually convince you the exact amount that you were convinced.
all right. Well, hey, we
So
made it through our list. It's 56
yeah,
cards that
yeah,
we touched on in some sense or another.
yeah.
And
And there's so many other ones too, by the way. Like we were
I
very selective.
know
We were just
what
like,
a
holy cow,
set.
there's so much stuff going on here.
What a set. But hey, I'm gonna be out there with the rest of you on Arena, smuggling surprises and being 3 steps ahead, and probably playing some variation of Is It Transmogrify in Explorer, which is where you can find me essentially every day. It's not gonna change with this set, but there's a lot of stuff here, which means some of it's got to be really sweet. So that's kind of where I come
Yeah, it's
down
just
on it,
yeah. I think we know that compared to last set, especially, there's so many like crazy over the top things to do with these cards.
which is fun. That sounds like
Yeah.
fun to me. And that does it. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like the video. And please reach out to me with any questions, either in the comments or on Twitter at Monetary Mentor. I look forward to hearing from you, and until then, be kind to yourself and have fun out there.